Hello and welcome to your in-depth weekly horoscope for week commencing the 10th of October for the Sun or the Ascendant. I'm going to give you some broad strands to look out for, but please stay with me. I will then dive deep to give you in much greater detail all the ins and outs of each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces. Now, as this week begins, the energy of last week's full moon is still cascading into this next 7-day period. Now, that full moon was in Aries. Aries is the sign of initiation, and the moon in Aries can be a little bit volatile. It definitely pushes us to think about our own needs, just at a time when the Sun in Libra is asking us to be aware of the commonalities we have with others, particularly as the ruler of the sign of Libra, Venus, is very close to the Sun and was on that full moon and is throughout this week. So there may be some situations where diplomacy can still have a part to play, even where we feel a bit frustrated. And because Mercury returns to the sign of Libra on Monday, it was last there on the 23rd of September before retreating in its retrograde back into the sign of Virgo. Well, Mercury in Libra is a great asset because it can help us to be a bit more detached. If people do see things differently, have a different worldview, express their ideas differently to us, we can take it a bit less personally. So there is some real opportunities in that regard this week. But Wednesday is a very powerful day because you will recall that for the whole of October, and if you've watched my November monthly videos, for the whole of November, Mars and Neptune are in a square within 3 degrees. And on Wednesday, this becomes exact. It's also exact on the 19th of November, but this can be a very draining influence. Mars in the sign of Gemini is very bright and vivacious, but can be quite opinionated. But Neptune in Pisces can distort. You can see us embrace our imagination in an awesome way, but because they're at a square, the thrust, the fire of Mars is kind of dampened down by that wet energy that's coming from Neptune in Pisces. So I think that Mercury being in the sign of Libra can be some pushback against the draining and rather demoralizing energy of Mars squaring Neptune. But also on Wednesday, Mercury is in an opposition with Jupiter. This is a repetition coming back again because Jupiter's retreating and Mercury obviously went into retrograde and is coming forwards again. So if we do need to have that exchange of views, the important thing is not to exaggerate our point of view, to try to stay rooted in reality, because Mercury is a planet that really likes cool detachment through its rulership of both Gemini and Virgo. But also on Wednesday, the Sun and Venus in that tight conjunction, but particularly the Sun, is in an exact trine with Saturn. So Saturn is of course in the sign of Aquarius, very much about humanity, the collective, person kind as a whole. And it does continue in that attritional right angle with Uranus through this week. It's going to come to a close within the 1 degree on the 12th, again midweek. So a really important day is Wednesday, but it's still going to be a very potent influence, really right through to the end of November, right up until the 2nd day of December this year. But the role of Saturn in its angle to the Sun and Venus is very stabilizing. So we're given an opportunity this week to be perhaps a little bit more detached, to push back against that rather distorting energy of Mars squaring Neptune, which can see a lot of gossip and and inaccuracies doing the rounds, we're being asked to be mindful of Mercury opposite Jupiter, staying grounded around the exchange of opinions and trying to make them as factual as possible. But when it comes to relationship matters, perhaps the full moon in Aries is going to help to push something into the open that does require some discourse and some discussion and perhaps even renegotiation. So it could end up being, despite that tricky right angle between Mars and Neptune and the full moon, quite a constructive week. And it's all about seeing that even if we feel that we're very different to one another, and we can be very polarized in our positions, whether it's with people we find it difficult to work with, people online, or whether it's in terms of people in our immediate world, it's important to always remember the things that do actually make us all rather similar in some ways. And if we can celebrate those things, it's going to help us to deal with that challenging right angle between Mars and Neptune. Now, please stay with me for each of the 12 zodiac sign forecasts. But if you would like to understand what year 2023 will hold for you in terms of more serious astrology, if you give me 3 pieces of your personal birth data of time, date and place of birth, I can give you your forecast for next year, plus the rest of this year free, and in my special package, your personal life roadmap, your character analysis. This can help you to understand some of the patterns that have come up in your life, perhaps sometimes in a challenging way, that you can figure out how to negotiate better going forwards, but also where you can expand upon your potential and capabilities. There's 30% off in this special package. Please see the link below for more. Finally, if you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining me. I'd love it if you would subscribe. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. If you're an ongoing viewer, thank you so much for all your views. So Taurus, your week commencing the 10th of October forecast suggests that the full moon may have pushed something into the open or into your consciousness that perhaps is a little bit of an awkward truth. And it may be to do with the motives of a colleague or perhaps a friend, and it may actually feel a little bit uncomfortable to come to terms with this. The good news, however, is that with your ruler Venus so close to the Sun and both forging such a perfect angle to Saturn in the middle of this week, if you are really realistic about just hearing any objections, perhaps ones that have been shielded from you or not openly shared, if you just hear them out and try to respond to them in as a constructive way as possible, even if you don't like what people have said or even if you don't agree with it, try to keep the lines of communication open. Mercury arriving back in your 6th house can create a degree of tension. It can make things a little bit brittle, so you have a choice. But equally, Mercury's opposition to Jupiter can help you to inform yourself of a situation that maybe you thought you were fully up to speed about, but there may be some information outstanding that you can gain this week that can change your insights and therefore your relationship to any challenge that might have come up at the turn of the week and into this new week. And the diplomacy that Venus can bring to the Sun just suggests that this is a time when perhaps you might not get all the gains you want, but also it is a time when, if you're very realistic in your approach, it could actually be quite positive for your professional or work or employment prospects.